Hello. So I watched Black Panther several times. I'm gonna watch it again too. It's pretty awesome. And one of the main reasons why I liked it was because it reminded me of a book I wrote in 2013 called Rise of Oliria. I'll put a link in the description box. But yeah, so Oliria is similar to Wakanda, and of course it has its differences, but I never knew about Wakanda. I never knew about Black Panther um, until, of course, last year when they said they were going to make a movie about it. So I was pretty happy. And watching the movie just felt like I was watching my own book come to life. And so maybe my book will never become a movie. Maybe it will, who knows? But even if it didn't, the fact that I could technically kind of watch it almost just some of the characters and some of the other things are a little different, but pretty much overall is the same. I just felt it felt amazing. It felt incredible. So I'm just gonna do a short little video. Well, I think it's gonna be short. Who knows? I'm gonna do a short little video of what are the similarities and the differences of Illyria and Wakanda. So Illyria versus Wakanda. Okay, so Illyria is a man-made country in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and Wakanda is in Africa. So, that's that's that. What I mean by man-made is that they actually use kind of like Dubai. So they actually use materials, but more advanced materials, to make the country of Lyria, and it's as big as the United States. Um, my book in my book, Oliria is based on the year 2130, and it's only been around for 100 years. So it's been around since 2030. As opposed to Wakanda, it's based in present day. Oh, by the way, this is versus the movie Wakanda. I never read the comic books, so if any of you comic book readers know about Wakanda or have more information, just write it down in the comic section. But based on the movie, it was based on present day, and it has been around for centuries. So they have a lot more history than Illyria. Um, Illyria was created after World War III, so that was really the reason why people wanted to make a peaceful world. And Wakanda was created after a meteor hit their land, with a bunch of, well, actually, it wasn't technically after a meteor hit their land. It was more so after that panther told one of the warriors about a purple flower. Um, but yeah, relatively the same thing. They were kind of were they having a war over it? Yeah, they were having a war over vibranium, I think. So I guess you can call that a war too. But um, so I'll say created after a war hit the meteor, um, and they are having a war. I mean, created after. Okay, you get my point. So in Illyria, the current ruler is a queen. Her name is Janali Olori. Convenient, right? And in Wakanda, the current ruler is a king. So, and also T'Challa has a sibling. He has a sister, but Janali does not have any siblings. She is the only one. Um, in Illyria, the engineer is a man, and in Wakanda, the engineer is a woman. And when I wrote the book Illyria, I was like, okay, well, obviously the engineer is not the only one creating is not the only one creating these inventions. There's other people creating inventions throughout the country. But Suri, and then the engineer in my book, I didn't give him a name. I just call him the engineer. But the engineer, they create, I guess, more advanced, or they have the opportunity to create for the royals. And Suri is the princess, so she's related to T'Challa. And spoiler alert for Oliria, but um, the engineer is related to Janali through the mother, through her mother. So that's Janali's uncle. That's the engineer. So that's why he's such a loyal person to Oliria. Um, okay, so also in Illyria, oh, by the way, the engineer is one of my favorite people in my book. So you should already know that Shuri was probably, if not my favorite character. But yeah, she was my favorite character, as well as the spy. I thought all of the women, maybe I'm being biased, but I thought all the women were great. But I also loved Mumbaku and T'Challa. I really liked T'Challa. He was a bit weak, honestly, seemingly weak in the beginning, and maybe it's because he was unsure of himself, and that it. See, it was like reminding me of my own book. In my book, Janali seems kind of weak in the beginning, but she becomes stronger because maybe it's because she's just unsure about herself. But um, yeah, I took it as he was being unsure, more not necessarily weak, but just being unsure about himself, not really understanding how to run the country yet, or perhaps um, having a good heart. That's what his father says, having a good heart. So I think with Janelle, it's the same thing. She seems weak, but the reality is that she just has too much of a good heart, and she's unsure about herself at times. Okay, so in Illyria, the mother speaks through journals. Sorry, the Janelle, the queen, speaks to her mother through journals. So her mother died. Um, and in Wakanda, uh, T'Challa speaks to his father through a sand pouring ritual. At least I thought it was sand. If it's something else, I'm sorry. I don't know what it was, but it looked like sand. And so Janelle doesn't actually speak to her mom, but she writes to her. And spoiler alert again for Oliria, I haven't yet written this book yet, but in the seventh book, she has 7 journals. So by the 7th book, she has 7 journals. She puts the 7 journals to, she combines the 7 journals like a puzzle, and her mom pops out, like some type of virtual message, almost like a spirit, but it's really technology. In Wakanda's case, he was actually speaking to the spirits. It was fascinating. But yeah, um, so in Illyria, people know about Illyria. They want in, Illyria protects themselves with the gates, so they have incredible gates. So, and they have suits. So if a guard try to let someone in, they will get shocked. So the suits on the bodyguards protect not only Illyria, but it protects. I guess it keeps the guards in check. That's what. Um, but in Wakanda, no one knows about Wakanda on the outside world. So yeah. In Illyria, citizens can visit other countries. And based on the movie, from what I gathered, in Wakanda, spies and royalty can only leave the country. But that's based on the movie. I don't know if people do leave. They probably do, but it wasn't shown. Okay, so now let's see the similarities between Illyria and Wakanda. So the similarities is that they're both secluded. They both have the xenophobia, and especially like they both have it completely. Like, just don't let anyone into our country. That's how they are. It's really fascinating. And my story, Illyria, is about Janali allowing people into Oliria. She's the first queen of Oliria. So she decides to allow people to actually come into Oliria. And no one wants that. So it's definitely a tremendous thing that happens. And when it does occur, all hell breaks loose. It's just that's the whole idea of the story is like, was Janelli, the queen of Illyria, allowing people to enter her country a good idea in the first place? Some, at the end of the book, some might say no, some might say yes. I think, as an author, I think that she could have did it better. But ultimately, she just could have did it better. If she wanted to allow people into Illyria, she just could have done it better. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, so yeah, they're both technologically advanced too, like very advanced in technology, as opposed to the outside world. In Wakanda's case, people are just like catching up. Um, not as much, but there's they're still they're not as bad, I guess. Um, in other words, the outside world have buses and they have planes and weapons, but they don't have it as great as Wakanda. In Illyria, same thing, but after the war, it kind of shook things up, and so a lot of the world had to restart over. So Illyria is just much more advanced in the out as opposed to the outside world because of the fact that they had to start all over again. Um, so another similarity is that people rich in melanin, so like have dark skin, occupy majority of both lands. So in Wakanda, there's a lot of dark skinned people or just black people, and then in Illyria, there's a lot of black people. But however, in Wakanda, because of where it's at in Africa, the only people in Wakanda are black. You know, as opposed to Illyria. Illyria at one time in the beginning of Illyria allowed all forms of people to enter. But I would say in Illyria, it's about 85, 90%. Um, it's like the reverse of America. Illyria has a lot more African Americans, but it does have other people of different ethnicities because in my country that I created, everyone's welcomed, at least at first. But then if you read, I'm not going to tell you the whole part of the book, but in the book, I talk about how they just decide to eventually close their borders to people. So, yeah. Um, Another one is royalty. So, when I hear about UK and people talk about the UK, sometimes they hear about why do we still have royalty? Why are there still queens and kings? And that's a different topic to talk about. But I wrote a book about kings and queens in the 22nd century, I think it is. Um, because I thought it was cool. But I guess not too many people would think there would be kings and queens in the 22nd century, but I just figured, hey. But yeah, so there's royalty in Illyria, and then there's royalty in Wakanda. So that's pretty awesome. The next thing is that they have enemies surround neighboring enemies. So Illyria has Gulen, and this is a country that wanted to be like Gulen, but want to be like Oliria, but they aren't. And Oliria, they actually helped Oliria in the beginning, but Oliria never returned the favor. At least that's what the old Gulen claims. So now they're just enemies of Illyria, and they really hate Illyria because, as opposed to the country Illyria, I'm saying Illyria a lot. I'm trying not to do that, but as opposed to Illyria, Gulen is very poor, like very poor, and so in Wakanda, the enemy neighbor is M'Baku, I believe, and I don't know if he's considered necessarily an enemy, he just challenged T'Challa, but I guess it would be an enemy neighboring. Um, But yeah, I don't know if Mumbaku is very poor or not. I don't know too much specifics about that. But yeah, maybe they are poor, just like Gulen, and they felt like Wakanda should help. Mumbaku felt like Wakanda should help um, his people, or at least maybe Africa. I don't know. I'm talking a mess here. I'm gonna stop right now. All I'm saying is that both Oliria and Wakanda has an enemy neighboring them that's not too keen about what the country is about. Okay, so the next one is um, they both use advanced technologies to fight enemies. So in Wakanda, you see, Shuri had those arm guns made of vibranium and all kinds of stuff. Like everything was made out of vibranium. The spear that Okea, Okia, Ok. You know what? I'm not gonna even try. Okia had, um, and a bunch of other things like the Black Panther and his suit and Michael B. Jordan's suit. So, yeah, but Oliria doesn't have. I was thinking about before I even knew about Wakanda. By the way, I was thinking Oliria should have some type of um, like meteor hit, like a meteor space. Actually, you know what? Not even 2 or 3 weeks ago, I wrote on my Wikia page. I can also put that down so you guys can see it about Oliria. But I wrote about how Oliria had a meteor, like they had a space race with other countries, and they found a planet with lots of metal, and that's how they got really rich. And I did I wrote this all before. So they were mining meteors. I did this. I swear, I did this all before I knew about Wakanda and the meteor hitting. I It's funny how so similar it is, but yeah. So in Illyria, I don't want to give too much away if anyone wants to read the book, but I mean, whatever. I'm just gonna say this. Spoiler alert. Um, in Illyria, they use this thing called the Seda, and it's implanted into the hand. And what you can do is eventually in the upcoming books, they can use it to control technology. So it's like a human being that can control technology from far away. But in the first book, they can actually use it to get information. It's almost like they're their own search engine. So their eyes move back and forth and they would get information and then they'll know how to do anything. So if you need, for instance, if you need to learn how to change a tire on a car in Illyria using the SATA, you can do that. But there's only a certain amount of SATAs. But if you want to know more about that, you got to read the book. Okay, so another one is that both never had a war. They're both utopian countries. So Wakanda is utopia and Illyria is utopia. Never had a war. Doesn't want a war. Well, actually, Wakanda is not a virgin to war anymore because uh, they, yeah, they just started. Yeah. Okay, so sorry, they just had a war in the movies. Okay, so the next one is in the end, they create a bridge to connect their country to another, allowing the outside world more knowledge about them and their stuff. So in Wakanda, they figuratively built a bridge. So they allow the outside world starting to know about their technologies. Vibranium. In Illyria, they physically built a bridge to Gulen. If you want to know how they all of a sudden are now friends with Gulen, the enemy country, you could read about that. but they physically built a bridge and they allow more people into Oliria. So that's interesting because in the end of the movie, if you haven't seen the movie in Wakanda, um, T'Challa goes to, I guess, the UN, and he talks about how, wise men built bridges. And I thought that was pretty interesting because Oliria, Queen Janelle, actually builds a bridge to Gulen. So I thought this is so awesome. I mean, yeah, I pretty much was watching my movie. That's how I felt. My book. Okay, okay, so both countries have their own culture. I try to make my culture I try to put as much of my culture in Illyria as I could, but I could have done better. But yeah, in terms of actually showing my culture, I felt like I had to take out a lot. So if anyone out there has my first edition of the book, you would see all the types of things. I really wrote a huge chapter about the different culture of Illyria and everything. But but yeah, in Wakanda, they of course have their own culture too, the African culture, pretty much. So with some added Wakanda stuff in there. Okay, I'm almost done. Okay, and also in both countries, a parent died. So in Illyria, a former queen died called Queen Erlina. She died from a disease, though. But in Wakanda, the former king dies, T'Challa's father, and he dies because of an explosion. So there is difference in the way they died, but they both died. So they both lost a parent, and they had to rise. In other words, T'Challa had to rise up as king because his father died. But in Oliria, Janelle didn't rise up as queen because her mother died. Her father still remained king, but he uh, he resigned. There's another word for it, but he resigned early as king because he was just heartbroken. So he and he just couldn't do it anymore. He's like, "Look, my daughter's ready. I'll give it to her." So that's probably the reason why he made Janelle queen and Illyria. Okay, and lastly, I think this is the last one. Yeah. Lastly, no one has revoked their citizenship in Illyria and Wakanda. So no one wants, based off of what I know, no one wants to leave Illyria and no one wants to leave Wakanda. It's just that awesome. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And last, I just want to wrap it up with this. I wrote this book in 2013, and some interesting things happened throughout the course of, I guess, what is it, 4 or 5 years of it that I thought was very interesting to the outside world. And I would love to see Illyria as Rise of Illyria as a movie, but like I said, even if it didn't become a movie, seeing Black Panther and Wakanda as something just so similar to the book I created over years ago, and I never knew about it. It's just pretty awesome. And I know there's a lot more books out there that probably have similarities to my book or even to Wakanda's book. I mean, to Black Panther. But ultimately, I love the movie and I rate it 10/10. It's actually my favorite movie now. I never had a favorite movie before. Whenever someone asked me, I'll be like, I'm not sure what my favorite movie is. But now I have to say Wakanda is my favorite movie. And the main reason why is because it reminds me of my own book, Oliria. But anyways, I'll put a link in the description bar for